tuilinde Jumuiya Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
May God continue to rest his soul in eternal peace. I now request the Honorable Mr. Justice Isaac Renaura to read the formal eulogy by the judiciary.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are gathered here today to celebrate the life of the late Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, an embodiment of integrity, compassion, service, and intellectual vigor. He was one of many firsts, a pillar of the Somali community, and an integral part of the formative interpretation and application of the 2010 Constitution. Justice Ibrahim has been an inspiration to us all, to those who have worked closely with him, to those whose lives his decisions shaped, and to those inspired by his life's journey. Justice Mohammed Ibrahim was born on 12th December 1956 in Kisumu and was raised in the present-day Kakamega County. He was the third-born in the family of Ibrahim Haji Farah and Amina Haji Osman, both deceased. His siblings are Halimo Ibrahim, the late Abdi Shukur Ibrahim, and the late Fadumo Isir Abdillahi. Justice Ibrahim was married to Halima Yusuf, who is present with us, and they were blessed with 4 children: Amina Amal Muhammad, Khadija Habon Muhammad, Farah Muhammad, and Abshir Muhammad, who are all here. Justice Ibrahim began his formal education at Kakamega Township Primary School, where he obtained his certificate of primary education in 1971. He then attended Kakamega High School, where he sat for the East African Certificate of Secondary Education examination in 1975 and the East African Advanced Certificate of Education examination in 1977. Justice Ibrahim later joined the University of Nairobi to pursue a Bachelor of Laws degree, graduating at the top of his class in 1981. He completed a diploma in legal education at the Kenya School of Law in 1982 and was admitted to the role of advocate as an advocate of the High Court of Kenya on 11th January 1983. Justice Ibrahim was the first member of the Somali community to be admitted as an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Justice Ibrahim was first employed as an untrained teacher at Kisumu Girls High School from 6 February 1978 to August 1978 while awaiting university admission. He was later employed at Mr. Warongi and Mwita Advocates in Nairobi in November 1982 as an intern, and after being admitted to the legal profession, was subsequently confirmed in employment as an associate litigation advocate. He was admitted as a salaried partner in 1985 and a full partner in 1987. I see Senior Counsel Paul Mwite with us. He would later establish his own legal practice, Mohammed Ibrahim and Associates, in September 1994, which expanded into Ibrahim and Isaac Advocates in 1997, when the Honorable Mr. Justice Hamid Isaac joined him, and I see the Honorable Mr. Justice Hamid Isaac with us. During this period, he was a steadfast champion for minority and marginalized communities, particularly advocating for the recognition of the citizenship rights of Kenyan Somalis. He took on pro bono matters with Kituo cha Sheria, advocating for refugee protection by representing Somali refugees following the collapse of the Somali government between 1988 and 1989. At the advent of the pro-democracy movement, he provided legal consultancy to political activists, and as a result, on 5th July 1990, he was detained without trial for 1 month. He also served as a council member of the Law Society of Kenya in 1994, as a pioneer trustee of Mwangasa Trust, a human rights-based organization, until 20th June 1994, and as a board member of the Legal and Education and Aid Program LEAD. On 22nd May 2003, Justice Ibrahim was appointed a judge of the High Court. He served as such and with distinction from that date to 2011. He was elevated to the Supreme Court on 16th of June 2011 as part of the inaugural bench under the 2010 Constitution. At the Supreme Court, he served in various capacities, including as the court's representative to the Judicial Service Commission until his death, and as chairperson of the Judiciary Committee on Elections. He also led several key portfolios, including the court's engagement with the electoral process, intellectual resource management, and the court's strategic planning and implementation portfolio. Justice Mohammed Ibrahim also did considerable community work. He was the director of Mohammed Ibrahim Charity Organization, a non-governmental organization that aims to restore dignity to the elderly by providing health care, housing, food, and other basic needs. Justice Ibrahim passed away on the 17th of December 2025 after a prolonged illness. May his soul rest in eternal peace.
And Vice President of the Supreme Court, the Honorable Mr. Smokin C. Wanjara, Supreme Court Judge, the Honorable Lady Justice Joaquin Dongo, Supreme Court Judge, the Honorable Mr. Isaac Renaura, Supreme Court Judge, and the Honorable Mr. William Ouko, Supreme Court Judge. I now request Mr. Charles Mutinda, Counsel representing the Honorable Attorney General, to make the application and submissions from the bar.
Thank you, Your Ladyship, the Honorable Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, and also the President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, the Deputy Chief Justice, and also the Vice President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, Honorable Judges of the Supreme Courts, constituting the bench today. Your Ladyship, I will ride on the protocols that you've already established and the recognition you've made to those who are present. And for the record, Your Ladyship, my name is Charles Mutinda, Deputy Solicitor General, representing the Honorable Attorney General, who could not make it for these proceedings as she is engaged out of the country. Your Ladyship and members of the Supreme Court, allow me to make this solemn application for the closing of the file of the late Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, Judge of the Supreme Court of Kenya. It is a profound privilege for the Honorable Attorney General, as the titular head of the bar, to present this application in honor of a jurist whose service to this nation was marked by integrity, humility, and unwavering dedication to justice. Honorable Chief Justice and judges of the Supreme Court of Kenya, the Honorable Attorney General conveys our deep gratitude to Your Ladyship and this honorable bench for leading us in these special tribute proceedings. Though they are procedural in nature, they hold immense symbolic weight to the profession and to the family of our departed judge. Today, we formally conclude the administrative chapter of a life spent in service of the Constitution. Yet, we also affirm that the legacy of the late Justice Ibrahim will remain permanently etched in the history of our judiciary. Honorable Chief Justice and judges of the Supreme Court, the late Justice Ibrahim was more than a jurist. He was a guardian of constitutionalism, a champion of the rule of law, and a voice of reason within the halls of justice. His judgments, even dissenting ones, revealed careful deliberation, intellectual independence, and an abiding commitment to fairness. With every decision he rendered, he strengthened the pillars upon which our justice system stands. Honorable Chief Justice and judges of the Supreme Court, 2,400 years ago, Socrates gave the world what has become an iconic definition of the qualities of a good judge. He said, a judge has four things. They hear with courtesy, they answer with wisdom, they consider soberly, and they decide without bias. The late Justice Ibrahim embodied all these virtues in exemplary measure. While the jurisprudence of the late Justice Ibrahim is preserved in the Kenya Law Reports, his influence as a mentor who lived the qualities of a good judge will live in the minds, careers, and character of those he guided. He leaves behind not just written judgments, but a generation shaped by his wisdom and example. Honorable Chief Justice and judges of the Supreme Court of Kenya, in legal practice, a matter is concluded when a file is closed. Yet, for Justice Ibrahim, the closing of his file does not mark an end. His work continues in precedents that will guide our courts, in advocates and judicial officers inspired by his conduct, and in the greater confidence Kenyans place in our judicial system because it was served by a man of his caliber. To the family of the late Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, we extend our appreciation. You shared with the nation a person whose intellect, discipline, and dedication enriched our courts and strengthened public confidence in the administration of justice. Honorable Chief Justice and members of the bench, on behalf of the Attorney General, the Solicitor General, the Office of the Attorney General, and the entire legal fraternity, we express our enduring respect. It is our hope that the legacy of the late Justice Ibrahim will continue to illuminate the path of justice for generations to come. As I conclude these opening remarks, Your Ladyship and members of the bench, I respectfully submit and move the court to humbly consider the tributes that will shortly follow in honor and celebration of the legacy of the late Justice Mohammed Ibrahim. Much obliged, Your Ladyship.
Thank you. I now call upon the Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Renson Igonga, to make his submissions.
The Chief Justice and the President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, the Deputy Chief Justice, Honorable Philomena Mwilu, Honorable Judges, it is my humble submissions to proceed and say that it saddens me to be present here for the purpose of the closing of the file of the late Honorable Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, Supreme Court Judge. I'm, however, honored to make these final submissions, this very special occasion to close the file of one of Kenya's greatest legal minds. Justice Ibrahim's journey in the law began when he left the firm of Waruya and Muita Advocates to establish his own law firm, Mohammed Ibrahim and Associates Advocates. It was during this period that I first came to know him personally. His practice was marked by integrity, fairness, and a deep commitment to justice. He was not only a brilliant lawyer, but also a mentor and confidant to many of us in the profession. His strive for a better Kenya was evident in the way he used the law as a tool for social justice. He defended the vulnerable, championed constitutionalism, and believed that the law must always serve humanity. His private practice years were a testament to his courage and independence, qualities that later defined his judicial career. When he was first appointed to the High Court in 2003, Justice Ibrahim carried these values with him. He served in Eldoret, Nairobi, and Mombasa, where his rulings and judgments reflected his unwavering belief in fairness and human rights. He was never afraid to depart from the views of the majority when the law demanded it, delivering dissenting opinions that were carefully reasoned and deeply principled. His elevation to the Supreme Court in 2011 marked the beginning of a new chapter. As one of the inaugural judges of the court, he helped shape Kenya's constitutional jurisprudence under the 2010 Constitution. He participated in landmark cases, including the presidential election petitions and the Building Bridges Initiative case, always guided by fidelity to the Constitution and the rule of law. His tenure was also marked by leadership roles, including chairing the Judiciary Committee on Elections and serving gallantly at the Judicial Service Commission until his death. It will certainly be difficult to match the late Justice Ibrahim's longevity and commitment to the career solemn calling of judging and his equally luxurious period in private practice. We are, however, lucky that he left us his rich legacy and that his dedication and brilliance remained immortalized through his judgments and writings. We must remember him for the principal jurist he was, the passionate defender of human rights, and the steadfast champion of justice that he was. He shall be remembered for the numerous decisions in the superior courts where the law guided him away from the majority. Justice Ibrahim did not shy away from delivering his dissenting opinions, supported by well-researched and carefully reasoned decisions. While we may never fully fill the gap by his exit, I am confident that we shall live up to his legacy. We must celebrate that we had a chance to have shared his life, and more so, his legal career with us. His untimely death left deep pain in us, which we may never easily overcome. I cannot imagine how much more pain his family has endured as a result of his passing on. I can only pray that the Almighty comforts them and softens their hearts so that they're able to accept his will. I bring with me messages of sincere condolences and goodwill from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions and my family. We trust that the late Justice Ibrahim is in a better place. May his soul keep resting in peace. Many of you may not have known that the good justice was my personal friend for over 20 years. I therefore lost a very dependable confidant and an advisor. As we close his professional file, I beseech us once again to keep his legacy file forever open by leaving what he embodied during his lifetime with us in appreciation of his goodness to humanity during his time on earth. With those submissions, my lords and ladyship, I humbly pray that the file of this great son of the soil be closed accordingly. Most obliged.
Thank you, Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Renson Igonga. We are now going to hear tributes by the Executive Director, Kituo Sasheria.
Honorable Chief Justice, President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, Deputy Chief Justice, and Deputy President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, all judges of the Supreme Court present, those who encountered him during this period remembered his principled and unwavering belief that the law must serve the people, especially those who are marginalized. He understood deeply that justice cannot exist in theory alone. It must be accessible, practical, and felt by the communities who need it most. At the heart of his engagement with Kituo was a firm conviction that legal aid is an essential pillar of democracy. For him, the law was not merely a professional tool, but a moral responsibility. Lawyers and advocates, he believed, must stand with those who cannot afford representation and those who are too often excluded from the protection of the law. The late Justice Ibrahim also carried with him a deep concern for the dignity and rights of the Kenyan Somali community, his own community, which for many years faced systemic discrimination and exclusion. As one of the earliest Somali advocates admitted to the Kenyan bar, he understood both the symbolic and practical importance of representation and advocacy. He spoke courageously against the injustices faced by the Kenyan Somalis, particularly the discriminatory processes that required additional vetting and documentation to prove citizenship. His concern extended beyond citizenship discrimination to the broader struggles of forced migrants and displaced communities who faced immense barriers to legal protection and recognition. The late Justice Ibrahim understood that refugees, asylum seekers, and displaced persons required dedicated legal advocacy if their rights were to be meaningfully protected. His vision and advocacy contributed to the shaping of what would eventually become Kituo cha Sheria's forced migration program, a department that today continues to support refugees, asylum seekers, and displaced communities in their search for justice.
persuade the bench, not or to contest the law. We gather to remember, to honor, and to place upon the permanent record of this court the life and service of one who devoted his intellect, integrity, and quiet courage to the administration of justice in our republic, the late Honorable Justice Mohammed Ibrahim. As I rise today on behalf of the Law Society of Kenya, I do not so to advance submissions in the adversarial sense, but to place on record the gratitude of an entire profession. For some files carry pleadings, but some files carry history. This is such a file. And as we close it today, we do so with reverence for a life lived in service to justice, to country, and to the enduring promise of our Constitution. We do so to honor a life lived in fidelity to the Constitution, a life spent strengthening the institutions that safeguard our democracy, and one that now forms part of the enduring story of Kenya's constitutional journey. Justice Mohammed Ibrahim belonged to this historic generation of jurists who carried the responsibility of giving meaning to the Constitution of Kenya, 2010. Our Constitution was forged through decades of struggle, sacrifice, and the collective hope of a nation determined to build a more just and accountable state. Those entrusted with interpreting that Constitution therefore carried a heavy, often enviable responsibility, because more than deciding disputes, they're shaping the constitutional culture of a new era. At that moment of profound transformation of our country, Justice Ibrahim emerged among the class of legal professionals entrusted to breathe life into the Kenya dream as envisioned in the new constitutional order. He approached that responsibility with the qualities that define his entire judicial career: intellectual discipline, humility of character, and unwavering commitment to fairness. Before his elevation to the Supreme Court, he had already distinguished himself in service at the High Court and later at the Court of Appeal. In those courts, he developed a reputation for decisions that were thoughtful, measured, and deeply grounded in principle. Advocates who appeared before him recall a judge who listened carefully, questioned thoughtfully, and delivered judgments that reflected both analytical rigor and human understanding. He was never impatient with counsel. He was never dismissive of argument. He understood that justice is not served merely by deciding cases quickly, but by ensuring that every litigant leaves the courtroom knowing they have been heard. When the Supreme Court was constituted, Justice Ibrahim joined that historic bench that would lay the jurisprudential foundations of the court, and what foundations they were. In its early years, the court confronted questions of enormous national significance, ranging from electoral governance, constitutional interpretation, the limits of state power, and the institutional authority of the court itself. These were not ordinary legal disputes, but were matters that tested our preparedness to conform to a new constitutional order. Rightly, that was the bench of pioneers tasked with interpreting a transformative constitution whose contours were still being defined. In that role, Justice Ibrahim helped shape the early jurisprudential foundations of the court. To judge matters profoundly. And if the majority decision speaks for the court, the dissent of any judge speaks for the future. Justice Ibrahim exemplified what it means to be a jurist who could boldly distinguish himself, his independence, and his endeavor to develop the law beyond determining isolated disputes through well-reasoned dissent. His courage to dissent reminded all of us that fidelity to the Constitution often requires a judge to stand apart. He symbolized that a court of last resort is not merely a forum for anonymous conclusions, but a chamber in which competent interpretations of the Constitution are carefully recorded for the benefit of the nation and for the wisdom of future generations. Through this, he demonstrated that a judge ought to be proposed by Justice James Douglas in his reflections on Lord Denning, revolutionary in spirit, but conservative in practice. Two of his dissents in particular stand as powerful illustrations of his intellectual independence. The first arose in the case concerning the registration of an organization advocating for the rights of sexual minorities, NGO Coordination Board versus Eric Gitari. This case presented the court with complex and sensitive questions touching on freedom of association, statutory regulation, and the broader social context within which constitutional rights are exercised. A majority of the court ultimately held that the refusal by the NGO Coordination Board to register the organization violated the Constitution. However, Justice Ibrahim respectfully took a different view. In a careful and deeply reasoned dissent, he argued that constitutional rights must be interpreted within the broader legal and societal framework and give them context. His opinion reflected a belief that courts must navigate the delicate balance between individual liberties, legislative framework, and societal interests. It was a dissent delivered not in confrontation, but in careful reflection, measured, thoughtful, respectful, and anchored in principle. The second is perhaps the most widely discussed example of his constitutional courage, the historic litigation surrounding the constitutional amendment initiative popularly known as the BBI case. This case asked a question that went to the very heart of Kenya's constitutional order. Does the Constitution possess a basic structure of foundational principles that cannot be altered through ordinary amendment procedures? This novel question captured the attention of the nation. While the majority of the court concluded that the Constitution of Kenya does not recognize such a doctrine, Justice Ibrahim once again stood apart. In a powerful dissent grounding in constitutional history, he reflected on the long struggle that produced the Constitution 2010. He reminded the court that Kenya's past was marked by repeated constitutional the next generation can see the sky. To return a finding that a great son of our land has rested, Judge of the Supreme Court of Kenya, be marked close with gratitude, reverence, and knowledge that his legacy will continue to guide this court and the republic it serves. We send our sincere condolences as well to the loss, and the Law Society of Kenya rests its case. Thank you.
Thank you, President of the Law Society. I now invite Mr. Paul Mwite, Senior Counsel, to give his tribute.
Chief Justice, Deputy Chief Justice, Your Ladyship, my lords, before I pay tribute to Mohammed Ibrahim, permit me to pass my personal condolences to Mrs. Ibrahim, her children, and indeed the entire family and his cousin, Amina Mohammed. A tribute to Justice Mohammed Kadar Ibrahim, a pillar of our republic. For the bench, the bar, and all who hold the law in reverence, the passing of Justice Mohammed Kadar Ibrahim, a judge of the Supreme Court of Kenya, is not merely the loss of a distinguished judge, but the silencing of a profound moral voice within the temple of justice. As a fellow advocate and officer of the court, I join everyone in honoring a jurist whose life was a testament to the courage, integrity, and unwavering principle that define the highest calling of our profession. I was privileged many decades ago to have recruited him as a pupil, progressing to an associate and then to a partner in the then firm of Waruyu and Muite. A pioneer's path forged in principle. Long before he ascended to the Supreme Court bench, Justice Ibrahim was making history and demonstrating a fortitude that would become his hallmark. His admission as an advocate in January 1983 was not a personal milestone alone. It was a door kicked open for an entire community, shattering a formidable barrier. His detention in 1990 for the noble act of advising and acting for pro-democracy activists was a crucible. The jurist, architect of a new constitutional order. Upon his appointment to the inaugural Supreme Court in 2011, Justice Ibrahim brought with him a lived understanding of the Constitution's soul. He was not an interpreter of the abstract text, but a defender of a covenant meant to heal, to include, and to elevate. In the seminal 2013 presidential petition following the elections, and in other landmark rulings, his voice was essential in giving early substance and gravity to our new constitutional architecture. Justice Ibrahim's legacy is a dual charge to those of us who remain. To the judiciary, he leaves a standard of a judge who understood that the law, in its highest form, is a shield for the vulnerable and a check on power. To the bar, especially the senior counsel bar, as leaders of our profession, he exemplifies
the advocate who uses his expertise as an instrument of societal good, even at great personal cost. His battle against the discriminatory pink cards reminds us that advocacy extends beyond the courtroom. While stationed at the Eldoret High Court, Justice Ibrahim would hear cases throughout the day, often starting the final matter even after 4 p.m. The task of writing judgments for so many cases he handled followed him all the way to Mombasa. During his vetting before the tribunal, Senior Counsel Fred Gatia graciously represented him. The only concern raised against Justice Ibrahim was the backlog in delivering judgments. No one ever questioned Justice Ibrahim's integrity. Fortunately, the then Chief Justice, Dr. William Mutunga, who is with us today, granted Justice Ibrahim time off to clear the pending judgments. And when he wrote those pending judgments, each judgment bore Justice Ibrahim's trademark, a deep and thorough analysis of both the law and the evidence. Justice Ibrahim was always courteous to counsel and to the parties appearing before him. He never raised his voice, never raised his gentle voice against anyone. As we reflect on his journey, from pioneering lawyer to detained activists to revered justice of our highest court, we are reminded that the arc of a principled legal career can indeed bed towards justice. His seat may be vacant, but the clarity of his conviction and the weight of his integrity remain a permanent part of this Supreme Court's fabric. In honoring him, let us recommit ourselves to the sacred duty of upholding the rule of law, protecting the marginalized, and ensuring that the courage he displayed never becomes a relic of the past, but a living inspiration to the future of Kenya's judiciary. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Senior Counsel, Mr. Paul Mwite. I now request Senior Counsel Chairman, Mr. Philip Mugo, Senior Counsel, to pay his tribute.
My Lady, Chief Justice Martha Koome, Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court, Court of Appeal, High Court, Right Honorable Moses Wetangula, Senior Counsel, Speaker of the National Assembly, the DPP, Mr. Renson Igonga, retired Chief Justice Willie Mutunga, retired Chief Justice Nancy Baraza, With that, allow me to recognize everybody else by way of adopting all the other protocols. Of course, retired Attorney General, Senior Counsel, and all others. This afternoon, as Chair of the Senior Counsel Bar, I joined the judiciary led by the Supreme Court and colleagues at the bar led by the Senior Counsel Bar leadership and the leadership of the Law Society in mourning and also celebrating the passing of Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, a serving judge of the Supreme Court of Kenya. I, in particular, pass a message of condolence to Mrs. Mohammed Ibrahim, her lovely children, and all other members of the family led by my good friend, Ambassador Amina Mohammed, who is also a professional colleague, on the passing of the judge. I wish to state that his passing marks the loss of a great jurist who understood the solemn burden of judgment and the humility required of those who are entrusted with it. Indeed, judging is a sacred task. Many judges don't realize it, but they occupy that rare and hallowed space where human beings, conscious of their own fallibility, are nevertheless called upon to determine the rights, liberties, and fortunes of others. Islam, the faith to which Justice Ibrahim belonged, captures the gravity of this responsibility with striking clarity. It teaches that judges fall into three categories. Only one destined for paradise is the judge who knows what is right and judges accordingly. The others condemned for tyranny and ignorance. The others are condemned for tyranny and ignorance. It is a sobering reminder that law is not merely a profession, but a moral calling. Justice Ibrahim belonged to that first and rare category. At the High Court, and later in this honorable court, the Supreme Court, he discharged his duties with honesty, independence, and an unwavering commitment to justice as he understood it. He neither courted popularity nor bowed to expedience. His judgments reflected careful thought, moral seriousness, and fidelity to the rule of law. Indeed, not once did I hear or ever come across a situation where he apologized for any judgment that he made. Throughout his career, Justice Ibrahim resisted the all too familiar temptations of power, fame, and fortune that so often beset public life in our country. By temperament and conduct, he was amongst the most humble judges to serve in Kenya's superior courts. Yet his humility never translated into timidity. He was courageous when courageous matters mastered most and was even more costly. During the struggle for Kenya's second liberation, Mohammed Ibrahim, then an advocate, was detained without trial in July 1990, a testament to his principled commitment to justice even beyond the courtroom. My colleague, Senior Paul Muite, many times tells me the story of how he got information that they were coming for him, and he left early, but he forgot to tell the younger lawyer to leave the office. But when the time came, Justice Ibrahim, or then Advocate Ibrahim, stood tall and walked all the way to the basement with those who had come for him. Perhaps most telling of his character was his attitude towards accountability. When questioned by the Vetting of Judges and Magistrates Board regarding a backlog of judges arising in the context of ill health and an overwhelming backload, he responded not with defensiveness, but with candor and responsibility. He acknowledged his shortcomings and expressed sincere regret to the litigants affected. Such humility is rare amongst judges. It's rare, and amongst judges, it's exceptional. These days, we even see judges defending themselves on Twitter, a space that belongs to advocates. I think he has never and would never have done that. Judge Ibrahim's life reminds us that greatness in judging lies not in infallibility but integrity. He served Kenyans with distinction, competence, honesty, fearlessness, and deep conscientiousness. From where I stand, and for the colleagues of the Senior Counsel Bar who are sitting here today, I venture to say that in all respects, he qualified to be conferred with the rank of Senior Counsel. Indeed, had he lived to retire from the judiciary, I personally would have encouraged him to join the family of Senior Counsel. May Allah grant eternal peace to the soul of Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, and may his example continue to guide those who remain with us and those who remain entrusted with the solemn responsibility of judging others. With this tribute, I respectfully support the motion.
Thank you, Senior Counsel Chairperson, Mr. Philip Mulugo. I now invite the Speaker of the National Assembly, Right Honorable Dr. Moses Wetangula, Senior Counsel, to give his tribute.
Lady Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court, Lady Deputy Chief Justice and the Deputy President of the Supreme Court, Judges of the Supreme Court, our retired Chief Justice, Dr. Willie Mutunga, retired Deputy Chief Justice Nancy Barasa, retired Attorney General Githu Muigai, members of the Senior Bar, the family of our brother Ibrahim, ladies and gentlemen. I must thank you, Chief Justice, for inviting me to these proceedings of closing file of our brother Ibrahim. I was also requested to come here by the chair of our class of University of Nairobi 81, Ben Bai, who asked me to speak on behalf of our class. Justice Ibrahim and I knew each other when we were in Form 6. I was in Friends School, Kamsinga. He was in Kakamega High School. Although he comes from the Somali community that occupies northern Kenya, he was born and brought up in the same environment as I and many others in western Kenya, in Kakamega in particular. We joined the University of Nairobi together in a class of 45, and among our teachers and lecturers included Dr. Willie Mutunga, Justice Aaron Ringera, the late Professor Okoth Ogendo, the late Dr. Bonaya Godana, former Governor Professor Kivutha Kibwana, retired Justice Jackton Ojwang, and others. We were a small class, neat, united, focused, and little wonder our class at per capita level, I think, has produced the highest number of judges of all courts in Kenya. The High Court, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. I acknowledge Justice Fatuma Sichale from my class, Justice Michelule from my class, Justice Boaz Olao from my class. Those I haven't seen, I acknowledge you. And when the first Supreme Court was established, again at per capita level, our class was represented, with Justice Ibrahim being one of the first judges of the Supreme Court of Kenya. When we finished university, there's a retired judge called Mutasa Jaffa who invited Ibrahim and I, after I had left the bench, and offered us his office on Luthuli Avenue to work under him rent-free, provided we did pro bono work for Kituo cha Sheria, which we did until Paul Mwite lured my brother for a better pay to join him. Our class has remained united as expected, and we meet in the homes of any one of us who offers every 2 months, bi-monthly, where we reflect on our journey through the law, our journey through life, our journey through politics for those who are in politics, and our journey through our country. When his health was good, Ibrahim never missed those meetings. Justice Ibrahim was a well-loved member of our class. I don't remember any single situation where he had an active argument or disagreement with any one of us. And he remained a brother to everybody in that class. His rise to the bench as a judge was celebrated by all of us. And his judgments in the 3 presidential election petitions of 2013, 2017, 2022 helped immensely in shaping our electoral jurisprudence, a jurisprudence that will help this country for many years to come. Ibrahim was such a man, like Kofi Annan would say, a man with a soft voice and a powerful message. And this can be seen and felt in his judgments, and above all, in the influence he imparted and exerted on those he engaged and met and worked with. This morning, Lady Chief Justice, it's regrettable that our brother is no more. I presented to the President the retirement benefits of judges bill, which was ascended to law, a bill that defines the appreciation of our society to members of the judiciary, a bill that has been hanging unattended since 1948. That today we have a bill into law, and is now law, that will determine, regrettably, my brother Justice Ibrahim will miss the benefits of that bill, the retirement benefits of our judges. And critical in that bill, Chief Justice, is our appreciation as Parliament that judges retire at 70. And from that age, more than anything else, you need serious Medicare. And we have provided a very generous Medicare for retiring judges, knowing that many of our colleagues who retired have retired to squalor, to oblivion, and eventual early departure from life. So I stand here on behalf of my class of 81. I also stand here on behalf of the National Assembly and the Parliamentary Service Commission to eulogize and pay tribute to my brother from a great class that has in the history of this country produced a foreign minister, 2 speakers of the National Assembly, a judge of appeal, and many other prominent Kenyans in the sphere of the law. To the family of our brother, Watu wa Ingo from Kakamega, we bring our condolences to Mama and your children, my sister Mina, and may the soul of Brother Ibrahim rest in eternal peace. Amen.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, for that tribute. I now invite Ambassador Amina Mohammed to give a tribute on behalf of the family of Justice Ibrahim. Welcome.
Honorable Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, Honorable Lady Justice Martha Koome, the Honorable Deputy Chief Justice, Honorable Philomena Mwilu, Honorable Justices of the Supreme Court of Kenya, Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, the Right Honorable Moses Wetangula, Senior Counsel Paul Mwite, Chair of the Senior Councils, Honorable Judges, retired Chief Justice, retired Deputy Chief Justice, retired Attorney General, friends of Justice Ibrahim. I'm honored, Your Ladyship, to make this tribute on behalf of our family. And if we will, I'd like to introduce members of our family. And I'll start by introducing Saado Ali, who is the spouse of my late brother. His children who are here, Amal, Mohammed Ibrahim, who is also a lawyer by profession, and hopefully will be joining either the bar or the bench soon enough. We have Farah Mohammed Ibrahim, who's also here. Abshir Mohammed Ibrahim, who is also here with us. He is Honorable Justice Ibrahim's last-born son, and did us all the great service of actually leaving school to spend time with his father in the last year of Justice Ibrahim's life. We truly owe him a debt of gratitude. We have his sister, Halima Ibrahim Haji, her husband, and our cousin, Adan Jama. We have our brother-in-law, Saado's brother, who is also here with us, Bashir. We have his cousins and his friends. And I'll just point out to two of his dear friends who spent a lot of time with the family during his illness and after the passing of Justice Ibrahim. That's Judge Ole Kantai, Senior Counsel Philip Murgor, Mr. Philip Kisia. So, Your Ladyship, I'm honored to make this tribute on behalf of the family. We gather today with hearts that are heavy with loss, yet deeply grateful for the life of Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, the life that he lived, a life shaped by courage, restraint, and a quiet dignity that never sought applause. He walked through the world with humility and an unshakable sense of purpose, guided always by a belief that one's life must be of service to others. My brother's story did not begin in courtrooms or chambers of power. It began at home, in a family where values were taught not through instruction, but through example. After he lost his mother, my mother's youngest sister at a young age, my mother stepped up. We grew up all together under my mother's wings. Mama Ibado, whose love for family and community was legendary, cared deeply for us and believed profoundly in nurturing every child that was entrusted to her care, and there were many. Discipline was firm, expectations high, humility non-negotiable. From her we learned that service to humanity was not a choice, it was a responsibility. The judge was very special to Mama Ibado. She brought him home, together with his mother, her baby sister, to our house 3 days after his birth. Their closeness and special relationship endured to the end. From a very young age, Justice Ibrahim possessed an extraordinary strength of mind. He could confront adversity, however grave, without being consumed by it. He was measured in thought, he was disciplined in action, and deeply respectful of authority, never out of fear, but out of an instinctive understanding of order, of responsibility, and of restraint. His brilliance was evident early, but it was quiet, anchored in curiosity, in moral courage, and a deep sense of justice. He was also an exceptional listener. Long before either of us fully understood the worlds that we would one day inhabit, he would listen very patiently as I spoke about diplomacy, about nations, about world peace, and about the possibility of a more just global order. He listened not to interrupt or impress, but to understand. Even then, there was a depth to him, a seriousness of mind paired with a gentleness of spirit. To us, he was a father, a husband, a brother, a cousin, an uncle, and a protector. And in particular, for me. We went to school in Kakamega. I was the youngest by a number of years and could not navigate the anxieties of childhood. Although in the beginning, both my older brother, Jamal, and George tried to sabotage my school adventure and did not appreciate the distraction of looking after me, they eventually accepted their fate and cared for me, shielded me from fear, and stood between me and the uncertainties of the world. That instinct to be fair and protect the vulnerable never left him. It became part of who he was and infected the rest of us. We grew up loving our country deeply. We both believed in the power of the law to shape a fairer society. Our paths diverged. Mine towards international law and diplomacy, his towards constitutionalism and public interest litigation. But the compass that guided us remained the same. We were raised to believe that education was not just for personal advancement, but for service, humanity, and service to our country. Though he was deeply proud of his Somali ancestry, my brother carried Kenya in his heart. It was and remained. His upbringing was diverse, spanning cultures, communities, and identities. It allowed him to know belonging and to recognize exclusion when it occurred. He understood what it meant to stand at the margins. He He never ignored injustice. He met it with courage, with fearlessness, and with moral clarity. When he joined the legal profession in the early 1980s, he did so for recognition. He understood the weight of that moment, and he carried it with humility, aware that his presence was long excluded from it. Beginning, he aligned conscience. Justice. During the turbulent years of the late 80s, as others have said, and early 90s, firmly on the side of history, defending human rights, democratic reform, and the rule of law, often at great personal and family cost. His detention without trial was not an interruption of his journey. It was a crucible that deepened his commitment to constitutionalism and strengthened his belief that justice must always protect the vulnerable. Throughout his professional life, whether in private practice, civic advocacy, or later on the bench, the golden thread that bound his work was service. He did not seek attention, he sought impact. In private practice, including his work with Waruhio and Mwita advocates, and later in his own firm, he remained deeply engaged in public interest litigation. His involvement with institutions such as Kituo cha Sheria, the Lawyers Committee for Human Rights, and as a founding trustee of Mwangaza Trust reflected a life anchored in access to justice and the defense of fundamental rights. When he joined the judiciary in 2003 as a judge of the High Court and later in 2011 as a judge of the inaugural Supreme Court, he brought to the bench the wisdom of lived experience. He had lived reality of people. His judgments were balance and compassion. He listened deeply, he weighed carefully, and he ruled with fairness. To sit on the first Supreme Court under a transformative constitution is a rare calling. Justice Ibrahim embraced that responsibility with seriousness and with restraint, fully aware that each decision helped shape the moral architecture of our country. He believed profoundly in the promise of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 as a living document, an anchor of democratic life, and a safeguard of our freedoms, and he always spoke to us about it. Even beyond the courtroom, he continued to serve. When his colleagues entrusted him to represent them at the Judicial Service Commission, he carried that responsibility with integrity, with thoughtfulness, and an unwavering commitment to the independence of the judiciary. Those who worked alongside him will remember his calm presence, his gentle humor, and his deep humanity. He did not raise his voice to be heard, not at work and not at home. His authority flowed from consistency, from moral clarity, and an unshakable commitment to do what was right, even when it was difficult, and especially then. After the judge passed away, I engaged some of his friends, many of his clients, when he served at the bar, family, and most importantly, his younger, closest brother, Ahmed Rashid Jibril. What they all said to me pleasantly confirmed what I felt about his life's work. That he served with distinction on the Supreme Court, and yet most of them will remember him most vividly from his years at the bar, at the very heart of the profession. There he represented his clients with uncommon skill, arguing their cases with firmness, with clarity and unfailing respect for the courts. Those he represented had confidence in him because he left nothing unsaid that ought to be said and nothing undone that ought to be done. When his submissions concluded, they felt that their cases had been fully and honorably placed before the court. His faith in the judiciary and the institutions of justice was steadfast, even in moments when others were inclined to doubt. His belief that the courts will ultimately vindicate the rule of law did not waver. To him, that faith was not naivete, but the principle upon which his life in the law rested. The law for him was not a profession, it was a calling. He gave himself to it wholly, with discipline, with conviction, and deep affection for the craft of advocacy. He believed in it completely, served it with dedication, and pursued it with devotion that was at times delightfully and admirably stubborn. In that fidelity to the law and to the ideals it embodies, he leaves a lasting example to the profession and to all who value the enduring strength of the rule of law. For our family, he was many things: a brother, a father, an uncle, a mentor, and a quiet pillar of strength. Family was his anchor, although he spent a lot of time at work. No matter how demanding his responsibilities became, he always was present when we needed him. His love was steady, it was generous, and it was unconditional. I will narrate an interesting but uniquely Mohammed story. We grew up in humble and happy homes, and just before we entered the world of work, we all sat down and discussed a future pact. None of us would get married before we became financially independent. He was the most adamant of all of us. Fast forward a few months after he started working, he called our brothers to announce that the pact was problematic for him, as he wanted to get married, and that would not even be completing his master's program in London. He had made up his mind, and nothing anyone said would deter him. He had found the love of his life, and he was going ahead. In fact, he informed us that he agreed to have a small ceremony, and that was that. And nobody was going to change that decision. He was strong, minded and willed, and at that time, as he was throughout his life, completely and totally in love. We all fell in love with his beautiful wife in no time, and especially after we saw how happy she made him. It left to some of the original parties to that pact, including myself, to stick to its terms, marrying much later than he did. In Islam, we believe that life and death are not opposites, but part of a single, divinely ordered journey. That death gives meaning to life, and that a life lived in service prepares the soul for its return to its creator. When one has fulfilled his mission with sincerity, with integrity, compassion, death is not a tragedy to be feared, but a passage into peace. My brother lived with that understanding. He loved peace. He lived with courage and fearlessness. He served his mission fully. As we close this file, we do so knowing that his work is not finished, that it lives on in the jurisprudence that he shaped, the institutions that he strengthened and loved, and the values that he embodied. Kenya is better for having had him. We are much richer for having had him in the family as well. His example will endure long after the final page is turned. May Allah, the most merciful, grant him eternal rest, forgive his shortcomings, and admit him among the righteous. May his soul be enveloped in peace, and may we who remain honor his memory by carrying forward the integrity, the humility, the compassion, and the courage that defined his life. Thank you, Your Ladyship. Thank you, Justices.
Thank you, Ambassador Amina Mohammed, for that moving tribute on behalf of the family. Among the family friends, I also notice in our presence Mrs. Angela Ochieng, the spouse of our late Justice friend Ochieng, is among us. We will also be preparing for the closing of the file of the Honorable Mr. Justice friend Ochieng when we complete the consultations with the family and the Court of Appeal. Also, for the family, I wish to recognize in a very special way Mr. Njama, a dear friend and brother-in-law of Justice Ibrahim. He traveled with him to India and attended to him as he sought further treatment. I visited Justice Ibrahim in India, and I saw the care and the love that Mr. Njama extended to our brother. We will now move to the tributes from the bench, and I give this opportunity to the Honorable Chief Registrar of the Judiciary to give a tribute in 5 minutes.
My Lady, the Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court, and members of the distinguished bench this afternoon, the family of Judge Mohammed Ibrahim, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Wetangula, Senior Counsel, retired Chief Justice Emeritus, Dr. Willie Mutunga, retired Lady Justice, Dr. Nancy Baraza, members of the Judicial Service Commission present, Honorable Judges of the Superior Court of Record present, Mr. Charles Mutinda, representing the Honorable Attorney General, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Honorable Renson Ingonga, Ms. Faith Odhiambo, President of the Law Society of Kenya, and all senior counsel present, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Chief Justice, I begin by expressing my profound gratitude to your ladyship for upholding the solemn and important tradition of closing the file proceedings for departed judges and judicial officers. This ceremony holds great institutional significance. It is more than merely a formal adjournment of a distinguished career. It is a moment when we pause to recognize that behind the robes, the judgments and rulings that are delivered was a life of dedicated service that has now returned to its maker. On behalf of all our judicial officers, the judiciary management, and the entire judiciary staff, I extend our deepest condolences to the family of the late Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, led by Ambassador Amina Mohammed, the Supreme Court family, and the wider judiciary family. We share in your grief because we have lost a pillar of our institution. The late Justice Ibrahim was, by all accounts, a towering human rights defender, a jurist whose record of service was truly exceptional. Yet, despite his high office and unmatched professional stature, what defined him most was his extraordinary humility and resilience. He possessed a rare ability to relate with everyone, from the most senior counsel to the most junior member of staff, with the same warmth, respect, and genuine kindness. He made us all feel seen and heard. I recall his interview before the Judicial Service Commission when the commission was recruiting the pioneering bench to establish the Supreme Court. Out of 23 applicants who appeared before the commission, he emerged among the 5 selected to form that historic first bench, a clear reflection of the confidence placed in his intellect, integrity, and commitment to justice. Honorable Chief Justice, while the other speakers will speak to his judicial legacy, as the Chief Registrar and Secretary to the Judicial Service Commission, I wish to highlight his invaluable contribution to the administration of the judiciary. Following his appointment to the Judicial Service Commission on 2nd June 2022, Justice Ibrahim threw himself into the Commission's work with characteristic diligence and commitment. He served as a vital member of several key committees, including the Human Resource Management Committee, Finance Planning and Administration Committee, and the Committee on Administration of Justice, and also the committee that was to advise on external communication. He possessed a deep sense of justice and fairness, and this was particularly evident during the Commission's consideration of petitions against judges and disciplinary matters involving judicial officers and staff. In those deliberations, he consistently sought fairness for all involved, carefully weighing every issue with a principled commitment to due process. He was a strong defender of judicial independence and remained firm in his conviction that no one should be subjected to false accusation or unjust treatment. Justice Ibrahim was also profoundly collegial and cultivated genuine friendships across the institution. Beyond the formal deliberations of the Commission, he valued the moments that strengthened our bonds as colleagues. And whenever the Commission found time to socialize briefly, he would often be ready with his music, his speaker, and would bring warmth and lightness to the room. And fondly, many of us came to know him simply as Mo Ibra. I must also highlight his leadership as the chair of the Judiciary Committee on Elections. In this capacity, our officers worked closely. His dedication to ensuring the institution's readiness for electoral dispute resolution, his collaboration with the Office of the Chief Registrar and stakeholders in resource mobilization, and the seamless coordination of committee activities was instrumental in strengthening our democratic processes. He approached every matter with a steady hand and a heart for justice, ensuring that the administrative backbone of our institution remained strong and ethical. To the family, we thank you for sharing him with us. Our prayers remain with you during this difficult season. Although his seat at the table may be empty, the light of his example continues to guide us. Rest in peace, Justice Ibrahim. Rest well, Justice Mo Ibra. Thank you.
Thank you, the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, Honorable Frida Mukaya. I now invite the Principal Judge of the High Court, Justice Ogora, to give his tribute.
The Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, Honorable Lady Justice Martha Koome, the Deputy Chief Justice and Vice President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, Honorable Lady Justice Philomena Mbete Mwilu, Judges of the Supreme Court, Judges of the Court of Appeal, Judges of the High Court and Courts of Equal Status, members of the family of the late Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, Honorable retired Chief Justice Mutunga, Honorable Deputy Chief Justice retired Nancy Barasa, Right Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Wetangula, Honorable Deputy DPP, Mr. Renson Ngonga, Honorable Attorney General Representative, and retired Attorney General
Mr. Gitu Mugai, the chair of LSK, Faith Odhiambo, senior council members present, Paul Mute and Murgor, senior counsel, Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, Frida Mokaya, Judicial Service Commissioners present and past, members of the bench and the bar, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Today I have the solemn honor of speaking on behalf of the judges, judicial officers, and the entire High Court and courts of equal status family to convey our deepest condolences on the sad demise of Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, a jurist of exceptional caliber, a devoted public servant, and a steadfast guardian of the Constitution. Justice Ibrahim's distinguished journey on the bench began on 22nd of May 2003 when he was appointed a judge of the High Court. He served with distinction in Civil Division and thereafter the Commercial Division before joining the newly established Judicial Review and Constitutional Division in 2004. As retired judge at Eldoret High Court, as resident judge at Eldoret High Court, from 2007 to 2009, he brought justice closer to the people of the entire North Rift region. He later served as a resident judge in Mombasa, where I was able to meet him because I was practicing in Mombasa. He then continued to distinguish himself before his well-deserved elevation to the inaugural Supreme Court of Kenya on 16th of June 2011, marking the culmination of an extraordinary High Court career. His service on the bench was marked by unwavering integrity, intellectual depth, and a profound commitment to the rule of law. His judgments remain a lasting testament to his legal acuity and moral courage. Justice Ibrahim consistently affirmed that jurisdiction is conferred by law alone and cannot be assumed by the consent or convenience of parties. He reminded the state that it must obey the law and never abuse its privileges or immunities to the detriment of the public interest. He was equally fearless in the defense of individual liberty. In the case of Republic versus Menza Mugunza Menza, he acquitted two accused persons who had been held in custody for 6 years without credible evidence, declaring that it would be, in quote, a monstrous injustice to put them on their defense. In doing so, he reminded law enforcement agencies that the purpose of prosecution is not to appease public sentiment or to calm community anger, but to bring charges only where there is reasonable, objective, and credible evidence. In constitutional matters, Justice Ibrahim was guided by a deep reverence for the Constitution. He affirmed that the High Court is always a constitutional court, and that once a party invokes the Constitution, the matter assumes significance above all others, for the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. As a judge of the High Court, he was the Constitution's primary enforcer and custodian, and he carried that responsibility with remarkable dignity. Perhaps one of the most enduring features of his judicial philosophy was his conviction that courts must never abdicate their responsibility in the face of legislative inaction. He reminded us that where legal uncertainty persists and Parliament has not moved to resolve it, the courts must step in to ensure consistency, certainty, and uniformity in the law. In this, Justice Ibrahim demonstrated that the bench is not a passive bystander in the administration of justice, but an active and indispensable pillar of the constitutional order. One of the most defining judgments of our late brother while he was in the High Court is found in Mahmoud, Mohammed, Hashi, and 8 others. This is a matter in which I personally appear before the judge while I practice in Mombasa, a case that placed Kenya at the center of global maritime jurisprudence. At a time when Kenya had become a regional hub for prosecuting Somali piracy suspects arrested by foreign naval forces, Justice Ibrahim was called upon to determine whether Kenyan magistrates' courts had jurisdiction to try piracy committed on the high seas by non-nationals. This was in an attempt to determine whether the Colonial Administrative Jurisdiction Act of 1890 was applicable in determining, in founding criminal jurisdiction in maritime matters. At a time when Kenya had become a regional hub for prosecuting Somali piracy suspects arrested by foreign naval forces, Justice Ibrahim was called upon to determine whether Kenyan magistrates' courts had jurisdiction to try piracy committed on the high seas by non-nationals. In a characteristically rigorous and principled decision, he held that jurisdiction must be founded on clear statutory authority. Interpreting Section 5 and Section 69 of the Penal Code, the Judicature Act, and the Merchant Shipping Act, he concluded that subordinate courts lacked jurisdiction over piracy committed outside Kenya's territorial waters, and that in the absence of explicit legislative extension or saving provisions, the proceedings before the magistrates' courts were null and void. His judgment was bold, meticulous, and apologetically anchored in the rule of law. Justice Ibrahim questioned reliance on colonial era statutes, insisting that criminal jurisdiction could not be implied or retroactively cured, and underscored that courts must operate strictly within the bounds set by Parliament. Although the Court of Appeal later adopted a broader, internationally aligned interpretation and restored piracy prosecutions in subordinate courts, Justice Ibrahim's decision remains a landmark in Kenya's jurisprudence. It exemplified his judicial courage, intellectual independence, and unwavering commitment to legality, even in matters of immense international and political significance. And I say that the judge was courageous in this matter because trial of pirates in the Horn of African region was an issue which attracted international relevance. Kenyan and other third world countries were being forced to try pirates because the Western world feared trying pirates in fear of the repercussions. And so it required total courage to say, no, we do not have jurisdiction. This case was particularly significant in terms of regional politics, particularly in the Horn of Africa, the need to deter piracy through prosecution, and the desire of many countries, especially in the West, to abstain from such trials while expecting Kenya and other third world countries to do the trial. Therefore, I found the decision by Justice Mohammed Ibrahim quite reflecting that he was a person of enormous courage, and to date, the sentiments which he showed or he expressed in that judgment remains relevant for courage. Justice Ibrahim's legacy is not confined to the written word of his judgments. It lives on in the litigants who received fair hearing before him, in the advocates who appeared before a bench that was learned, firm, and just, in the judges and judicial officers who served under his leadership in Nairobi, Eldoret, and Mombasa, and in the nation whose constitutional fabric was strengthened by his unwavering commitment to the rule of law. To his family, we offer our heartfelt condolences. You shared him with the nation for many years, and for that sacrifice, Kenya owes you a depth of gratitude. As we mourn his passing, we also celebrate a life devoted to the service of justice and the strengthening of the rule of law. The legacy of Justice Ibrahim will continue to inspire the bench and all who labor in the cause of justice. On behalf of the judges of the High Court and co-equal courts, we extend our heartfelt condolences to his family, colleagues, and all who were privileged to know and serve alongside him. I pray that God the Almighty may rest his soul in eternal peace.
Thank you, Principal Judge. I now give this opportunity to the President of the Court of Appeal to give his tribute.
My Lady, the Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court, Kenya, the Deputy Chief Justice and Vice President of the Supreme Court, and other judges of the Supreme Court, my Lady, please allow me to adopt the protocols that have been well laid out by many who have spoken before me. We gather here today with a deep sense of respect and solemn reflection as we mark the ceremonial closing of our proceedings for the Honorable Mr. Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, a jurist whose life, values, and service have left a defining imprint not only on our judiciary, but also on the constitutional architecture of our nation. Long before he ascended to the bench, his firm grounding in human rights defense placed him among the reform-oriented lawyers who shaped the intellectual and moral foundations of Kenya's second liberation. Through his principled advocacy, he contributed to the expansion of the constitutional rights, strengthened cause for the independence of the judiciary, and championed essential checks on executive authority. His work and voice were part of the collective struggle that ultimately culminated in the transformative 2010 Constitution, reflecting his lifelong commitment to justice, dignity, and the rule of law. Justice Ibrahim embodied quiet strength. He was a judge who spoke softly, yet carried an authority rooted not in power, but in principle. His fidelity to justice, human dignity, and the rule of law was constant and unwavering. His work on the bench reflected a mind both humble and profound, guided always by fairness, compassion, and a deep sense of constitutional morality. I had the privilege of serving closely with Justice Ibrahim when he chaired the Judiciary Committee on Elections, where I served as his vice chairperson. During that period, the committee benefited immensely from his steady leadership, calm temperament, and thoughtful wisdom. His approach to election dispute management, careful, principled, and deeply grounded in constitutionalism, helped strengthen the judiciary's capacity to navigate some of the most sensitive and high-stakes matters in our democratic process. For many of us, it was not only a colleague, he was also a mentor and an anchor, one who guided with humility and inspired through example. His commitment to institution building, his mentorship of younger judges, and his dedication to a fair and humane justice system have left an enduring legacy. As we symbolically close this file today, we do not close the influence of his work, his judgments, his values, and the examples of his life remain with us. What we close is simply a chapter, one marked by honor, dignity, and a lifetime of service to this nation. On behalf of the Court of Appeal, I extend our deepest appreciation for his distinguished service and our continued solidarity with his family. May they find comfort in the knowledge that Justice Ibrahim's contributions will continue to illuminate the path of justice for generations to come. May his memory be a blessing, and may we remain faithful to the ideals he so steadfastly upheld. Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord, Justice Musinga, President of the Court of Appeal, for that tribute. I now request our retired Justice, the Deputy Chief Justice, Dr. Nancy Mbarasa, to give her tribute.
My Lady, the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya and Vice President and President of the Supreme Court, my Lady, the Deputy Chief Justice of the Republic and Vice President of the Supreme Court, my Lords and Lady of the Supreme Court, may I ride on the protocols already laid in these proceedings. My Lady, I pay this tribute to a personal friend, a brother, and a colleague in the profession, both at the bar and on the bench. I knew Justice Mohammed Ibrahim long before we ever sat together on the bench as Supreme Court judges. He was a year behind me at the University of Nairobi, Faculty of Law, and was introduced to me by his long-term friend, Counsel Anthony Lubulela, who brought him one evening to my room at the box. And he introduced Mohammed to me as, this is your brother from Isuha in Kakamega. I showed a bit of amusement, but my brother Mohammed told me I speak Isuha. Indeed, Justice Mohammed Ibrahim had been born and raised in the famous Amalemba estate in Kakamega. He spoke good Isuha language, and from then henceforth, we communicated to each other majorly in that lingua. And we related as brother and sister from that day until his death. Our journey into the law began then. It got shaped by youthful idealism, debate, and shared dreams of justice. Those early years forged a bond that time, titles, and circumstances never diminished. When fate and duty later brought us together on the Supreme Court bench of the Republic of Kenya, it felt both historic and deeply personal. To serve with Mohammed in that foundational moment of our constitutional democracy was an honor I will always cherish. He brought to that bench the same qualities I had known since our student days: intellectual rigor, quiet confidence, humility, and a profound respect for the law and for the people. I observed him as we labored through hours to craft advisory opinion number 1 of the Supreme Court, which laid the principles for our constitutional interpretation. I admired his deep thinking. Justice Ibrahim was not loud in presence, but he was firm in principle. He spoke with care, listened with intent, and reasoned with depth. His commitment to the Constitution was not performative, it was lived. He understood that justice is not only about correctness in law, but also about fairness, dignity, and humanity. Beyond the courtroom, Justice Mohammed was kind, he was gentle, and deeply decent. He carried himself with grace, treated everyone with respect, and never allowed office to distance him from people. To me, he remained the same brother I had known since our days in the box. He remained grounded, thoughtful, and generous of spirit. He never failed to call me to find out how I was doing, even long after I left the bench. In fact, his last call to me, I think, is before he left for India, never for me to speak to him again, but he did call me. I mourn not only a great jurist and a founding justice of our Supreme Court, but also a lifelong friend and brother. Kenya has lost a distinguished judge. The judiciary has lost a pillar, and I have lost someone whose presence in my life and work was both reassuring and inspiring. His legacy lives on in our jurisprudence, in the institution he helped build, and in the hearts of those who knew him and loved him. To the family of my brother Ibrahim, I say, Pole, may God continue to uphold you. Thank you, my lady.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nancy Barasa, for that tribute. I now call upon the Honorable Chief Justice Emeritus, Dr. Willy Mutunga, to give his tribute.
Honorable Chief Justice, Honorable Deputy Chief Justice, and Honorable judges of this Supreme and Apex Court, my deeply heartfelt condolences to the bench and to the family of my brother, comrade, and friend, Ibrahim. Honorable Justice Mohammed Ibrahim died in Nairobi the morning of 17th December 2025 and was buried the same day in the afternoon I attended the burial and paid my brief tribute at the graveside at Kariako Muslim cemetery, where I was also accompanied by my brother, Justice Smokin Wanjala. They Justice Ibrahim was one of the brilliant law students I ever taught. I was a lecturer in law at the University of Nairobi from October 1974 to June 1982. And I taught second-year students 2 courses of commercial law, namely sale of goods and hire purchase. Ibrahim attended my classes and excelled in his class participation and marks. He was, I must say, one of the students in my class who was excited and incited by my new approach of teaching law within historical, socio-economic, and political contexts. And ultimately, Honorable Ibrahim graduated top of his class and won a scholarship to study at the University of London. Judge Ibrahim was also a courageous member of the Law Society of Kenya and fierce defender of human rights. And this has been repeated in this enduring legacy of the late judge. It is a great story known and repeated and is now an immortal one. Honorable Ibrahim represented opposition politicians who dared to resist the Kanu Moi dictatorship in the 80s. He also single-handedly refused to register for a national identity card that the government imposed and one that was discriminated against the Somali community. Courage and a fierce defender of human rights remain one of the great stories on links and continuities of struggle for Kenya that we all want to see. I needed to clarify also the ordeal, clarify his vetting ordeal. He appeared before the vetting board set up under the Constitution of Kenya 2010. All judges who served before the promulgation of that constitution had to appear before the board. And the vetting board sent Honorable Ibrahim home on the basis of his backlog of judges he was supposed to deliver. He appealed against the judgment of the vetting board on the basis that the board overlooked the number of judgments he delivered during the period. The board overturned his own decision when the data showed that Judge Ibrahim did not suffer from judicial laziness and was very hard-working. The last attribute that I wanted to touch on is Judge Ibrahim as a people's judge, as a colleague in the apex court. I always remember Honorable Ibrahim as a judge who internalized the new culture of the Constitution, that courts were people's courts. And I'm sure Judges Wanjala and Ndungu will endorse this. The citizen was supreme because sovereign power belonged to her or to him, and was delegated to all judges. Honorable Ibrahim was a very keen listener, as it has been said, to litigants and their lawyers. But what hasn't been said is that his face beamed with compassion, humility, calmness, respect, justice. And I don't remember him ever castigating some of the very boring and ill-prepared advocates we encountered during the hearings. I absolutely must confess I failed to cultivate such a culture myself, but I remained his faithful student. We belong to Allah, from Allah we come, and to Allah we surely return. Much obliged.
Thank you, Chief Justice Emeritus, for that tribute. On behalf of my colleagues on the bench, the entire Supreme Court, we have registrars, law clerks, and staff who serve at the Supreme Court. And on behalf of the entire judiciary, represented here by judges from all the courts, those who have spoken and those who have not spoken, we have the presiding judge of the ELRC and ELC. We have representatives from the magistrates' courts, the Qadhi's courts. We have representatives from the Judicial Service Commission, represented by Commissioner de Justice Ishale, Justice Murima, Commissioner Orwande. I also see former commissioners, retired Attorney General Professor Gibu Muigai, Macharia Jero, and all of us present this afternoon, including the speakers who have given very moving testimonies and submissions about Justice Ibrahim. Justice Ibrahim being who he was, I know all of us would have liked to speak during this session, but this being a court proceedings, we could not accommodate everybody. But on behalf of the bench, I want to thank you for coming and for participating in this ceremony to honor the life of Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, and service. Before I call upon the Attorney General to make the closing remarks, and before we pronounce the decision of the court, allow me also to make my address. The family of Justice Ibrahim and all the distinguished guests of conducting closing of file proceedings for departed colleagues, both at the bar and the bench, is intended to serve as a symbolic reminder of both the members of the bench and the bar that we are called to serve as priests in the temple of justice. Collectively and individually, we should strive to pursue justice through the law while emulating the great example set by our departed colleague and brother, Justice Mohammed Ibrahim. His professional journey, as many have testified, was marked by integrity, excellence, and fidelity to the rule of law. Having listened to the tributes by all the speakers, it is undeniable that Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, Justice of the Supreme Court and Commissioner of the Judicial Service Commission, was truly a champion of the rule of law and defender of human rights, and his contribution to the growth of the Kenya jurisprudence and administration of justice remains unsurpassed. Long before his appointment to the bench, Justice Ibrahim distinguished himself as a fearless advocate for human rights, democratic governance, and constitutional reform during some of Kenya's most difficult, uncertain, and challenging years. He stood firmly with the voiceless, even when doing so carried personal risk, including detention without trial, never wavering in his conviction that the law must serve both as a shield for the vulnerable and as a restraint on those who abuse power. Justice Ibrahim joined the Kenyan judiciary in May 2003. We were sworn together as judges of the High Court. I will never forget when we gathered at the office of the Registrar of the Judiciary then, the Honorable Mr. Justice William Ouko, and he asked me, Martha, even you have come to become peon judge. And then I asked him, what is peon judge? He told me he doesn't know. Let us proceed. Maybe we will know later on. What followed was an illustrious 8-year journey across diverse stations and divisions. Justice Ibrahim first served in the Civil Division of the High Court in Nairobi, where he presided over a wide spectrum of disputes. This early exposure gave him a panoramic view of civil justice and the everyday struggles of our litigants. He was later transferred after a few months to the Commercial Division at Milimani, a specialized court designed to expedite commercial disputes. And here, Justice Ibrahim immersed himself in the complexities of banker-customer relationships, securities, mortgages, company law, and intellectual property. His judgment in this division reflected a keen understanding of Kenya's evolving commercial landscape and the need for efficiency in resolving commercial disputes. In 2004, he joined the newly established Judicial Review and Constitutional Division of the High Court, where he sat as a single judge and also in multi-judge benches. This was a turning point in his career. The Corinthian deliberations and principled dissents in constitutional matters broadened his perspective and positioned him as a key contributor to Kenya's post-2002 democratic jurisprudence. In January 2006, he was transferred to the High Court in Eldoret, where, as the resident judge, he oversaw courts across the North Rift region. His leadership in this region underscored his administrative acumen and ability to balance judicial and managerial responsibilities. This was followed by another posting in Mombasa in July 2009 as resident judge, where he handled one of the Kenya's busiest court stations. With only 3 judges serving the vast coastal jurisdiction, the workload was immense. Yet Justice Ibrahim thrived while proceeding over cases that would leave a lasting imprint on Kenya's jurisprudence. My attention was drawn to one of his landmark judgments, the case of Mohammed Ashi, alias Dodi, and 8 others versus Republic, where he affirmed the jurisdiction of Kenyan courts to try piracy offenses committed on the high seas. I confirm, Justice Ogora, that this is true. This decision attracted global attention, becoming a case study in universities across the United States, Europe, and Asia. He also delivered another groundbreaking ruling in Republic versus Mugunya and another, Mombasa criminal case number 276 of 2008, where for the first time in Kenya's history, bail was granted to an accused person charged with murder under the new constitution. This judgment has become a leading authority on bail in capital offenses. Another case that attracted my attention, presided over by Justice Ibrahim, was one by Ayub Juma Mwakesi versus Shirao Ali Mwakwere, election petition number 1 of 2008, where the judge nullified the election of a sitting cabinet minister. This bold decision underscored the judiciary's independence in the post-Kano era and reinforced the principle of free and fair elections. This experience at the High Court and the breadth of cases he handled equipped Justice Ibrahim with rare versatility, depth of judicial experience, and these formative years in the judiciary enabled him to not only shape Kenyan jurisprudence, but also prepared him for the weighty responsibilities of the Supreme Court, where a seasoned judgment, resilience, and principled approach would become invaluable in guiding the nation's constitutional destiny. I'll speak about his service in the Supreme Court, where he was elevated in June 2011, marking a culmination of years of rigorous judicial service, legal practice, at the dawn of the new constitutional order, the 2010 Constitution. Justice Ibrahim assumed office, joining the inaugural bench. His tenure at the Supreme Court was marked by participation in landmark judgments, including presidential election petitions and constitutional interpretation cases that have shaped Kenya's democratic trajectory. His steady hand and principled approach ensured that the court remained a guardian of constitutionalism and the rule of law. Justice Ibrahim believed that dissenting opinions occupy a vital place in the growth of jurisprudence and that they symbolize judicial independence, affirming that judges are bound not by conformity, but by conscience and reason. His dissenting opinions reveal a fearless judicial philosophy that consistently affirmed constitutionalism, the supremacy of the rule of law, and the centrality of human dignity and personal liberty that is guaranteed in our constitutional system. Beyond being a judge of the Supreme Court, Justice Ibrahim carried a portfolio that reflected both trust and responsibility at the highest level. As the senior-most judge, Judge number 3, after the Chief Justice and the Deputy Chief Justice, Justice Ibrahim often stepped in as the acting president of the court, a role reserved under the Supreme Court Act 2011. This position demanded not only judicial authority, but also institutional stewardship, ensuring continuity in leadership during transitions or absences. He served as the chairperson of the Judiciary Committee on Elections, overseeing judicial preparedness for election disputes. Successful training sessions that ensured that all judges, judicial officers, law clerks, and legal researchers and judicial staff were sufficiently trained to handle election petitions on matters of electoral law, especially emerging issues and other areas that required law reform. Justice Ibrahim also ended the court's strategic planning portfolio. His stewardship of the Supreme Court's strategic plan, from development to monitoring and evaluation, created a feedback group that kept the court aligned with its mission to effectively discharge its mandate, enhance its performance, and meet the diverse needs of the stakeholders. Justice Ibrahim also acted as the liaison with the internal stakeholders, such as the Kenya Magistrates and Judges Association, the Kenya Women and Judges Association, the Judiciary Staff Association, and ensured coordination of the Supreme Court engagement with non-state actors, with particular reference to civil society and the marginalized group. Justice Ibrahim oversaw the management of the Supreme Court's library, ensuring that the court's jurisprudence was properly documented, preserved, and made accessible for reference. Through his stewardship, the library secured vital resources and was strengthened as an important repository for legal research, supporting the continued development and enrichment of the court's decisions. On 17th May 2022, Justice Ibrahim was elected as a Supreme Court representative to the Judicial Service Commission and took his oath of office on 14th June 2022. And at the Judicial Service Commission, he gave a voice in judicial governance, appointments, discipline, reforms, and advocated for the Supreme Court's interests. In all these roles, Justice Ibrahim's portfolio reflected a judge who was more than a decision maker sitting in the Supreme Court, but one who was really a custodian of institutional integrity, a bridge between the judiciary and the society, and a strategist shaping the court's long-term vision. To conclude, we all mourn Justice Ibrahim, but at the same time, we thank God and celebrate a life that was lived in pursuit of justice and truth. The freedoms and liberties we enjoy today bear his fingerprints. His voice, his pen, and his presence helped shape the constitutional culture of modern Kenya. It is therefore undeniable that Kenya has lost a legal giant. But the values Justice Ibrahim stood for, courage, fairness, empathy, and justice, will continue to guide us. As we reflect on his life, let us commit to living out the ideals dear. To be principled yet compassionate, to be learned yet humble, to be courageous yet respectful. His legacy is not just in law reports or legal history, it is in the hearts and minds of those he mentored, the rights he defended, and the society he helped transform. We thank her for the gift of the life of Justice Ibrahim. May he find eternal rest. And may we all remain in honor of his memory by carrying forward the torch of justice he bore so valiantly. On behalf of all of us, we continue to condole the family and to pray for them that God will give them the grace to bear this great loss. And the legacy of Justice Ibrahim will guide them forevermore. Thank you very much. I will now invite Mr. Charles Mutinda to move the court for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Your Ladyship, and members of the bench, for the opportunity that you've granted many of us to pay tribute to our departed judge. Your Ladyship and members of the bench, the court has this afternoon listened to the eloquent submissions by the various speakers in support of the motion for closure of the file for the late Justice Ibrahim. Honorable Chief Justice and members of the bench, the detailed and eloquent submissions of the various speakers are a testament to the late judge's invaluable contribution to constitutionalism and the administration of justice. And so as we move to close his file, and on behalf of the Honorable Attorney General, I respectfully plead for orders as follows, Your Ladyship and members of the bench. The first is that these special court tribute proceedings be formally adopted as a permanent record of this honorable court and as an enduring legacy of our departed judge. The second, my lady, and your members of the bench, is that the certified copies of these special court proceedings be availed to the family of the late judge and also to the Supreme Court Registry, all the High Court registries, and to the Law Society for our future generations. Lastly, Your Lady and members of the bench, this being a matter of great professional and public interest, I pray that there be no orders as to costs. I do pray, Your Ladyship. Thank you.
Upon consulting my colleagues on the bench, this is the ruling of the court. Upon considering the application made by the Honorable Representative of the Attorney General, Mr. Charles Mutinda, Deputy Solicitor General, and the submissions made in form of tributes in honor of Honorable Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, the court finds merit in the application. Accordingly, we hereby order as follows: that these proceedings be and are hereby adopted as a permanent record of the Supreme Court of Kenya. 2, that certified copies of the proceedings, together with the written tributes shared by the various speakers this afternoon, be availed to the family of Honorable Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, Supreme Court Judge, the Supreme Court Archives, or High Court Archives, and the Law Society of Kenya. This being a matter of great professional and public interest, we do order that there shall be no costs. Orders accordingly. Finally, we do order that the file of the Honorable Justice Ibrahim Mohammed be closed. All rise. The court is adjourned.
So we will take a few photos. We will move to the CJ step to take a few photos. I request that the family takes lead, followed by the speakers, the Judicial Service Commission, the classmates, and the senior counsel present. All the speakers, the family, the Judicial Service Commission, the classmates, the judges, and the senior counsel present to the CJ's steps. Kasaburi, si upeane hizi vitu, wacha niende na hii yako, pea Serena hizi, plus my keys. Si unakuja? Yeah, I'm coming.